For over 2.5 million years, human life looked nothing like what we know today. No cities, no crops, no smartphones, no written words. And yet, in that vast stretch of time known as the Paleolithic era, the foundation of everything we now call civilization was quietly being built. Through stone tools, firelight, shared stories, and the rhythms of nature. The term cavemen conjures up crude stereotypes. Hairy men with clubs dragging women around, living brutishly and thinking little. But the reality was far richer, far more intelligent, and far more human. Daily life during the Paleolithic was defined by adaptation. People lived as hunter-gatherers, constantly responding to the environment around them. Their world was one of movement, not only through space as they followed herds and seasonal plants, but also through generations of innovation, learning, and storytelling. Far from static, Paleolithic life evolved dramatically over time and place. Each day began not with an alarm clock, but with light. Paleolithic humans lived by the rhythms of the sun and the moon. When the sun rose, so did the people. They didn't think in hours or minutes. Their understanding of time was embedded in cycles. The migration of animals, the flowering of plants, the changing sky. Survival wasn't managed by spreadsheets or schedules, but by deep, embodied awareness of the world around them. One of the first tasks each morning was tending the fire. Fire was not just a source of heat. It was a lifeline. It provided warmth during cold nights, kept predators at bay, allowed for cooking, and served as the social and symbolic center of the group. Starting a fire from scratch was not easy, and so embers were carefully preserved overnight using slow-burning materials. Rekindling fire was one of the first duties of the day, typically handled by those who remained in the camp. After ensuring the fire was alive, people assessed their most pressing needs. Was there enough food? Were tools in working condition? Was the shelter intact after the wind last night? Water was a daily necessity. Streams, springs, or meltwater pools were the usual sources, and people carried water using animal bladders, gourds, or woven containers long before pottery was invented. The pursuit of food defined most of the day. This didn't always mean dramatic mammoth hunts. While large game was pursued when possible, most Paleolithic diets were diverse and often relied more on gathered plant foods, small animals, fish, and scavenging. Women, and often older children, spent their mornings searching for edible plants, roots, tubers, nuts, seeds, fruits, greens. This was not simple or random foraging. It required sophisticated knowledge. You had to know what was edible, what was toxic, what needed cooking, and what parts of a plant were safe at which season. Generations passed this knowledge down orally, shaping a collective understanding of ecology. Meanwhile, hunting parties, usually composed of adult males, though not always, ventured out to track game. Hunting was dangerous and uncertain. It required stealth, patience, and coordination. Early humans likely began as opportunistic scavengers, but by 500,000 years ago, evidence suggests planned and cooperative hunting strategies. A simple spear might take hours to prepare, and you might still return empty-handed. When a kill was made, it was brought back to camp and shared. Sharing wasn't just generosity, it was survival. In small bands, cooperation was the glue that held the group together. Midday might bring a break, particularly in hot climates. During the hottest hours, people often rested, repaired tools, tanned hides, or sorted the day's gatherings. Stone tools were in constant use and needed frequent reshaping. A hand axe dulled quickly. A flint flake chipped improperly was useless. Toolmaking was both an art and a science, and everyone learned its basics. Skilled knappers, often elders, were highly valued. The toolkit of Paleolithic humans was broader than most people assume. Early tools were simple. Flakes struck from stones to create sharp edges. But over hundreds of thousands of years, technologies evolved. People developed scrapers for cleaning hides, awls for punching holes, burins for engraving, and points for spears. In the Upper Paleolithic, tools became more specialized and refined. Bone and antler were used for needles, hooks, and harpoons. Wood, though rarely preserved, was essential for digging sticks, spear shafts, and even shelters. In the afternoon, the camp might buzz with activity. If hunters returned successfully, the group gathered to butcher and process the animal. Butchering a large animal wasn't a simple job. It involved cutting through thick hides, separating meat, removing fat, extracting marrow, and drying or cooking as needed. Every part of the animal had value. Sinew was turned into thread, bones into tools, skins into clothing. Even the brain could be used in tanning leather. Evening approached with the fading light. As the sun lowered, people returned to the central fire. This time, quiet, reflective, may have been the most culturally rich part of the day. Around the fire, people talked, planned, taught, sang, and told stories. Children asked questions, mimicked toolmaking, or listened to elders retelling origin myths or past events. These stories weren't entertainment. They were education, memory, and cohesion. Shelters varied widely. Caves were used, but they were not the default. In many regions, natural rock shelters or constructed dwellings were more common. People built oval or circular huts from wood, bone, and hides. In places like Ukraine, mammoth bones were arranged into frames. Hearths were the central focus, often surrounded by sleeping and activity areas. The maintenance of shelter was ongoing, rethatching roofs, clearing debris, reinforcing windbreaks. Evidence from some sites suggests designated trash areas, implying an early awareness of hygiene and order. Childhood in the Paleolithic was immersive. There was no formal education system, no toys as we know them, no schools. But learning was constant. Children observed adults closely. They learned by doing, imitating tool use, identifying plants, helping with food preparation. Childhood was integrated into the life of the group, not separated from it. From an early age, children contributed meaningfully, carrying water, gathering kindling, even helping in processing food or hides. Health and care also played vital roles. Though the archaeological record is limited, there are skeletons with healed injuries, broken limbs, infected teeth, degenerative diseases that suggest individuals were cared for despite being unable to fully contribute. This tells us something fundamental about Paleolithic humans. They were not just survivors. They were caregivers. Compassion and cooperation were not inventions of modernity. They were always part of the human story. The diet of Paleolithic humans was diverse, flexible, and surprisingly nutritious. Studies of ancient bones and dental plaque show that people consumed dozens, even hundreds of different plant species over a lifetime. They ate tubers, legumes, fruits, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, leafy greens, each with different harvest times and preparation needs. They hunted everything from small rodents to megafauna like woolly mammoths and giant elk. Coastal groups fished with bone hooks and used nets made from twisted fibers. Inland groups trapped game and harvested insects. Some even practiced early forms of food preservation, drying meat, storing nuts in pits, using cold ground as natural refrigeration. Cooking, once fire was mastered, transformed human biology. It made food more digestible, reduced parasites, and increased caloric yield. Cooked roots and meats provided more energy than raw ones. This energy supported bigger brains and longer childhoods, two hallmarks of human evolution. Fire also allowed nighttime activity, which meant more time for social bonding, planning, and cultural development. Art, too, flourished. Long before the pyramids or the Parthenon, humans were creating symbolic expressions. Red ochre was used as early as 100,000 years ago. Carved figurines, engraved bones, and spectacular cave paintings, such as those in Chauvet or Lascaux, testify to a rich symbolic life. These were not idle doodles. They reflected beliefs, dreams, and shared meanings. Music was also present. Bone flutes from Germany, over 40,000 years old, produce scale-based notes. Rhythm instruments made from hollow logs or stretched skins likely accompanied rituals and dances. Art and music were not luxuries. They were threads that bound communities together. Spirituality likely emerged in many forms. Burial practices appear in the Middle Paleolithic, suggesting reverence for the dead. Grave goods, pigments, and body positioning all hint at symbolic thinking. Some cave art includes therianthropes, part human, part animal figures, which may depict shamans or visionary states. We cannot know their exact beliefs, but we know this. They wondered, they imagined, they sought meaning. Social organization was based around small groups or bands, typically 20 to 40 people. These groups were often extended families, though they interacted regularly with other bands. Trade networks existed. Shells from the coast appear hundreds of miles inland, and exotic stones show up far from their geological origins. Goods, ideas, mates, and stories traveled. These interactions reduced inbreeding, expanded knowledge, and built alliances. Violence did exist, but compared to later periods, signs of trauma are rare. Conflict likely occurred over territory or resources, but the small population density and mobility of bands may have limited large-scale violence. Cooperation was usually more advantageous than conflict. Sharing, not hoarding, ensured group survival. What emerges from all this is a portrait of people who were deeply connected to their world. Not passively, but actively. They shaped landscapes through controlled burning. They favored certain plants and animals, subtly guiding their abundance. They moved according to resource cycles, not just instinct. They were not primitive. They were strategic. They were botanists, zoologists, chemists, engineers, artists, doctors, and storytellers, all at once. The Paleolithic way of life was humanity's longest-running success story. It spanned continents, climates, and countless generations. It laid the groundwork for language, cooperation, symbolic thought, and technological innovation. And though agriculture, cities, and writing came later, none of them would have been possible without the brilliance, resilience, and adaptability of our Paleolithic ancestors. So the next time someone says, "just a caveman," remember, they weren't just surviving. They were learning, creating, exploring, connecting. They were us. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the daily life of Paleolithic people, make sure to hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to explore more stories from our ancient past, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.